Well, welcome to the Timextender webinar, Overcoming 3 Common Challenges with Data in the Cloud. It's my pleasure to introduce Joseph Treadwell, the Solution Specialist Director at Timextender. This is going to be a great presentation. Not only is Joseph a terrific presenter, but this presentation is an expansion of a very popular talk he gave at a Microsoft event earlier this year. Take it away, Joseph.
Okay, thanks so much, Jay. All right, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to tell you guys about overcoming some of the common challenges that I've seen out there in the field. Over the past decade and a half, I've been working with a great solution that's been helping organizations overcome many challenges with data, and more commonly and more recently, helping organizations with challenges with data in the cloud. And this success over the last few years has led us to be recognized as a Microsoft Partner of the Year finalist for the last 2 years in data estate modernization. So let's get right into it. What are the most common challenges? Well, as I've been working with organizations, helping them address data problems, the first question is, okay, how can we get this data that I have on-prem into the cloud? How can I do so effectively, quickly, and without opening up my organization to potential security breaches? Another way is too, how can I adapt to these new technologies that are coming out? We're seeing new technologies being released all the time. How can we as an organization stay up to date with those latest technologies? And the third is being able to deliver changes out to our business users quickly and reliably. How do we keep up with the demands of our business organization and ensure that they have the data that they need to be able to make informed decisions? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is a solution. Timextender is an automated data management platform that automates the development, maintenance, and documentation of the ingestion, integration, and orchestration of the data estate. Now, it all begins in the operational data exchange, where Timextender handles the ingestion of raw data from your data sources, whether these sources are on-prem or in the cloud. We have over 200 different data providers that allows you to get access to your data quickly, securely, and ensure you can stage that data in a highly scalable yet inexpensive data platform known as Azure Data Lake. The next area is what we call the modern data warehouse. This is where we use our low-code, no-code interface to allow users to integrate these multiple disparate data sources into a single version of truth. The third layer is what we call the semantic layer, or the semantic models. This allows you to define and deliver curated data sets that are relevant to a certain set of users or a group of users in your organization. So for example, you might have one for the sales department, one for the purchasing department. And this allows them to have a curated data set of data points that are relevant to them. And then from there, you can bring this data out to any of the desired platforms that you might be working with. And across all of these 3 different layers, we're constantly using metadata to make the platform more efficient, more reliable, and provide you with useful information. Some examples are managed execution. Timextender is constantly ensuring that the executions, these pipelines, are automated as quickly and as fast as possible to ensure your business gets the data they need quickly. There's also full end-to-end data lineage and documentation to ensure that you're able to know where your data is going, where it's coming from, and of course, who has access to it. Let's start by talking about how to get your data, your on-prem data, into the cloud. Now, if you're talking with a lot of software vendors out there, a lot of technology companies, it may sound like everyone already has all of their data in the cloud. But as we know, working with real organizations in the world, that much of the world's data is still stored on-prem. There's high volumes of data. It's stored behind highly secure private networks. How do we get that data out and then put it up into the cloud where it's more easily accessible from people outside of the organization. And then the question is, where do we put it? Well, we all know that the data lake is the leading cloud storage destination, right? It's very inexpensive and it's highly scalable. It can store potentially limitless amounts of data on a single instance. So, but the problem is the file structures and the different delta loads, the file types, the technologies involved with building and managing a data lake are very complex, and they take highly skilled individuals doing this. It's also very time consuming to maintain. So how do you address this issue? Not only getting your data into the cloud, but maintaining your data lake, maintaining the landing zone for this data. Timextender has a very unique automated way of handling this. Timextender interacts with Azure Data Factory to ensure you can get the data that you need securely and reliably. Our integration with Azure Data Factory allows us to use the dedicated integration runtimes to pull data from an on-prem location securely. This integration runtime gets installed in your on-prem location, and this essentially is a portion of the Azure Data Factory engine that gets installed behind your VPN. So it's secure, it's behind your VPN, it's accessing your data securely. And then what it does is it actually is pushing your data instead of pulling your data from outside. This would force you to have to open up certain ports in your firewall. It's allowing you to push your data out to Azure and then allowing Timextender to load that data to create the necessary places in the data lake and load those files into the data lake securely and quickly. Now let me show you what this is going to look like. So I'll pull up Timextender here. This right here is the Timextender user interface. As you can see here on the left side is the Solution Explorer, a high-level overview of the various areas of the application. We can see here, open in this tab is the operational data exchange that I mentioned. Now this is the area, as I said, that's focused on ingesting data, right? Adding these data sources and landing that in your initial landing zone. In this case, I'm using an Azure data lake. So we can explore our different data sources here. We can add a data source and we can go through the list. I'm just going to put in an example so we can see what that process looks like for adding a data source. So we can scroll through the many data sources that are available. We can also type in search terms to filter to find the exact data source that we need. But as you can see, we have quite a few different data sources available. Just about anything that's going to allow you to connect to the data that you have on-prem, whether that's a generic database or a complex SAP Salesforce adapter that you need. You can find the providers that you need, and then you can go through and get connected. Today, what we're going to be using is an Azure Data Factory connector for an on-prem SQL server. So we'll look at how setting that up looks. So we need to put in some information. We need to, of course, put in our credentials to access that on-prem database, but we also need to put in our information for that Azure Data Factory. Since I already have one set up right here, I can just show you what that's going to look like. We can edit this. Essentially, we put in all of our information for that Azure Data Factory, and then we're able to get connected using the power of Azure Data Factory to pull that data and land that in the data lake. So I have a data source here, and I'm simply going to execute this data source. Now, what that's going to do is that's actually pulling data here from my on-prem system. It's using the Azure Data Factory integration runtime. As you can see here, I have this installed. It's connected to my SQL server, and this is running right now to pull data from that on-prem SQL server securely and load that data up into folders and files in the Azure Data Lake. Let me show you what that looks like in Azure. So this here is the Microsoft Azure Data Factory interface, where you can go in and create your own pipelines. Now these pipelines can be, increasingly complex. There's tons of different activities new skills that you'll need to learn to be able to interact with this interface. However, Timextender, of course, is generating these processes for you automatically as you need them. So if we go to monitor here, we can see that we do have this load in progress, the one that I just started. So this is that Azure Data Factory load, and we can take a look at the Gantt chart, and we can see it's loading all of these tables in from my on-prem data source in parallel. So it's loading them in from an on-prem data source behind my firewall up into the cloud, landing them in an Azure Data Factory. The way that Timextender generates these pipelines is also very intelligent, creating a for each loop from within. So it's just going to repeat this copy table command for each table that exists in the data source. This allows data sources to change over time, but the Azure Data Factory is going to keep up with those changes, ensuring that everything in there still gets landed, still gets loaded there in the data lake for us. Great. So we've seen how Timextender can solve bringing data in from these on-prem data sources very quickly and easily. Let's take a look at adapting to rapidly changing technology. Now, as we've seen over the years, over the last 10 to 15 years, technology, data technologies have evolved dramatically. Not only has a data volume and velocity continues to increase, we'll see in organizations the amount of data that organizations have and how quickly that data is generated just keeps increasing faster and faster. So to keep up with that, of course, we need to create new technologies to be able to handle that, right? We've gone from using an on-prem SQL Server to using in this case, an Azure Data Lake Gen 1, and now we have an Azure Data Lake Gen 2. Now, many organizations were out there, they created their systems and built their systems on the Gen 1 technology. And when Gen 2 came out, they actually had to start from scratch, completely eliminating all the work that they've done and starting over. A lot of the same thing happens with SQL Server, people that are moving to technologies like Azure SQL Data Warehouse, which has now become Azure Synapse Analytics. This is very new technology. And again, the code used to build a data warehouse in SQL Server, very different from the code that's necessary to build a data warehouse in Azure Synapse. So how do you keep up with all of this new technology, this new code? Luckily, because Timextender is generating that code for you on the fly, you simply use our user interface to define your business logic, and Timextender will generate that code for you. You can easily migrate from a fully on-prem solution, going from SQL Server, starting to use Azure SQL Database, and as your data grows and gets even larger, being able to use Azure Synapse Analytics as well, all without having any downtime or any rebuilding of your project. Let's take a look how that works. Now in Timextender here, we can take a look at our data warehouse, for example. Timextender makes this so simple. All I need to do here is go to edit my data warehouse. And I have here, using my connection and my credentials to an on-prem SQL Server, I can switch this to an Azure SQL database and use that connection, or I can simply switch this over to Azure Synapse Analytics and begin using that connection. All I have to do is click OK. And as you can see, Timextender is taking a look at all of the different tables that are involved and allows me to redeploy the connections, all of the tables, and all of the code behind those tables to ensure it's performing properly and operating well on this new technology. All I need to do now is hit deploy and execute. Timextender will look at all of the tables, all of the code that's in there. It's going to create a new save point for me. And I'm going to put in here, switching to Azure Synapse. I'll hit save. This again is going to look through all of the different code that I have available that's required in my system. And it's going to redeploy that code specifically for Azure Synapse Analytics. It's going to use new technologies. So instead of using Azure Data Factory to move the data, now it's going to use Polybase, Azure Polybase technology to pull that data in from my data lake and land that in Azure Synapse Analytics. Again, ensuring that your organization, as you grow, as your data volumes increase, you're able to keep up with that technology and to see that there's very little downtime required when needing to evolve to new technologies. All right, now that we've seen how that works, we'll let this run a little bit. We'll talk about the next common challenge that we see. Delivering changes rapidly and reliably to the business. Now, everyone thinks, well, a lot of people think out there that a data warehouse is sort of a static thing, right? You build it, it's there, we're done, right? But data warehouses are only as static as the business is static. As long as that business is changing and evolving and growing, the data warehouse will also change, evolve, and grow. Right? So the business users are going to need new data points as we add data sources, as we try new platforms. We're going to need to bring those in, incorporate those into the data warehouse, and ensure that our business users have access to that data. So how do we ensure that these changes go through without breaking all of the existing reports that we do? Well, that's where organizations use a process of testing where you have multiple different environments, right? A development environment, test environment, production environment. This allows organizations to make changes to the data warehouse without impacting production reports. Now, the way that Timextender handles these three different environments is unlike anything you've ever seen. So it's able to interact with these environments all simultaneously and bring changes across as needed without you having to do complex code changes, code reviews, all of these different things. Because it's all stored in metadata, Timextender is able to bring these changes over very simply and very, very reliably. Let's take a look at how that works. Okay, so now we've deployed and executed our project. All the changes are up to date. Now we want to take these changes, as I mentioned, making changes here in development. We want to take these changes from development, move them into our production environment, right? Now, in any other methodology, there would be complex processes, integrating multiple developers' code together, having to look, compare, test, to do code reviews. This is a long, involved process. Well, in Timextender, we can simply open what we call the multiple environment transfer dialog. And this allows us to communicate with these multiple environments very seamlessly. So as my machine is communicating, we have here my development environment here on the left, and we have my production environment here on the right. And because I've already programmed all of my different database connections between development, between production, we know which databases, which servers we're talking to, I can simply just hit transfer. It'll take that metadata from my development environment, move all of those changes into production. I can then, of course, test, deploy, and execute right there very seamlessly, very quickly. So this really breaks down barriers from having to do complex code reviews to ensure you're bringing changes rapidly and reliably out to your users. Okay. Are there any questions out there coming from the audience before we conclude our session?
Yeah, can Timextender manage data imports from cloud apps like Salesforce and HubSpot?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So as I showed in that long list of different data sources, there is a dedicated connector directly for HubSpot and Salesforce as well. So you're able to easily, pick one of those, you put in your credentials to connect to one of those data sources, and you can begin extracting data from those data sources immediately.
Excellent.
Yeah, great question. Any other questions?
I've got another one if we're still waiting here.
Yeah, please.
Can the time savings over manual methods be calculated to quantify the value of automated solution like Timextender?
Yes, absolutely. We do have an ROI calculator that we use to help organizations define, what their cost and time savings might be for picking up a solution like Timextender. So if you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to show you what those time and cost savings would be. Great question.
Well, we've got one more here, Joseph. Does the Timextender platform handle building dashboards for us, or can we use our existing BI solutions?
Oh, you can absolutely use your existing BI solutions. And that's one of the beauties of Timextender. As we go back to this diagram, what you'll see here is the solutions and the data models that Timextender is able to deploy exist in environments that you already know and use, such as SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, and Azure Synapse Analytics. By being able to deliver these data models and data marts into these platforms, as well as Azure Analysis Services, you can then use any analytics tools, any front ends that you want that can connect to these platforms. And being that we're in a SQL-based environment, just about any visualization tool is supported for Timextender. So yeah, great question.
Excellent. Well, I don't think we have any more questions here.
So thanks so much, everybody, for attending. I just kind of wanted to summarize and wrap up a little bit here. Really, what I wanted to demonstrate today is that Timextender really helps a lot of organizations out there in 3 very specific ways addressing these common challenges, right? Getting your data from on-prem into the cloud, being able to adapt to these new technologies constantly, and of course, being able to deliver insights rapidly and reliably out to your organization. If you're interested in learning more, you can scan the QR code here, get to our website at www.timextender.com, and sign up today for a free demo, a hands-on workshop, or a proof of concept. Thank you so much for your time today.